You cannot not communicate. Already Paul Watzlawick stated that, and it's so true. And I think it's never been more true than today in this digital first world, where not only whatever you communicate in person counts, but also what your online profile and presence says about you. And it's not so much just the lack of the negative that counts, but also the lack of the positive. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, if you don't have an online presence, people are questioning what is wrong with this person. So I'm super excited to be joined by somebody who has not only built an incredible thought leadership status herself on the platform and a very highly engaged community, but also an entire business around LinkedIn. Karen Tisdell is our guest today, and I'm so excited you're here, Karen. Thanks so much for joining me.
I am so excited to be here. Such a big fan of your work. And this is not our first conversation, but I think this is maybe our third, but it feels to me like our 100th, because you've got the podcast. I see your name everywhere. I see you on LinkedIn all the time. And now, congratulations on the book. Well done. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Happy to be here. Amazed.
Now, honestly, likewise, like I've been fangirling you forever and today. Since we've connected on LinkedIn, I thought, who is this lady? She drops incredible content. She's got this highly engaged network who just comments whenever she posts something, and she always has something profound to say. She's always leading the way with her thoughts. I'm curious, why LinkedIn? How did you get to where you're now?
Did you just say fangirl? Like, I'm a fangirl of yours. How can you be a fangirl of mine? Like, we're both fanning out here, aren't we? It's hilarious because I am. I've just got so much admiration for your work, and I've never written a book. I think a book is such a huge achievement, and yours is a real decent book. When you said
I always say it's a freaking Bible. I'm trying to learn to write short. It's hard. I can't.
But what you've done is you've given so much value, and I just, I thought, yeah, she's written a book, and I thought, oh yeah, everybody I know has written a book in the last couple of years. Here goes another book, and it will be a pamphlet to add to my file, and it was a serious. It's a tome, people. It's a beautiful book. It's a tome. So I'm such a fangirl. So my journey on LinkedIn, I was a really early adopter of LinkedIn in 2005, started using LinkedIn as a headhunter to find people. And I went through, like all of us, like you yourself, I know, have been through some ups and downs. I was actually performance managed by somebody in my recruitment career, something that I don't think I've ever spoken about on a podcast.
Just want to say I've never heard this story either.
Yes, but I heard you speak about it on the MarTech podcast, which is, one of the most amazing, famous podcasts in the world. And I was like, oh, wow, of course Petra's on it, like 2 or 3 times, I think, And so I was performance managed by a recruitment manager of mine who took a huge dislike to me. I was determined to fight back from that. And in my last year of recruitment, so it was sort of 2 years, 18 months, 18 months, 2 years after I'd been performance managed, I had been doing a lot of reading about sales and a lot of thinking about sales. I also had become engaged. So all of those things all happened at the same time. And in reading a lot about sales and finding clients, I realized I just had a light bulb moment that I could use LinkedIn not just to prospect for people to put into roles, but I could use LinkedIn to prospect for clients. And so I doubled down on my prospecting on LinkedIn for clients, and I won the National Sales Award at Chandler McLeod right before I went on maternity leave, which was a real great opportunity to, sorry, I just did a very rude sign to the webcam, but for all of our listeners there, to the person who was performance managing me, which was the greatest feeling in the world. So I had some really early successes on LinkedIn, and then I went on maternity leave, had a baby. Baby was 3 months old, and I wanted to go back to work. Hubby wasn't so keen about me putting our baby into daycare. And so I was trying to sort of negotiate all of that as well. And my mother-in-law and my mum and all my mother's group were appalled. What do you mean you want to go back to work? And I'm like, I want to work. So I started a business at home, writing resumes, which within like 3 months turned into writing LinkedIn profiles as well, because I was like, I will not write your resume without writing a LinkedIn profile. Because as you said in your introduction, it's about not just the negative stuff, but it's about the positive stuff. Like not just what do you take away, but what do you put in? Not just what do you step away from, but what do you step towards? And so I started writing LinkedIn profiles, realizing that, you know, a lot of people get stuck with talking about what they've always done. And then they wonder why they keep attracting what they've always done. And they're just stuck. And I'm like, what do you want to do? That's what you need to talk about your profile. You know, if you've got a role and sort of 30% of your role is what you really liked, then don't talk about the other 70% on your LinkedIn profile. People will say, oh, but that feels like it's, you know, it's not being fair, or I'm not being true to myself, or I'm being dishonest. I'm like, no, that's the purpose of your resume and the interview. You know, the whole purpose of your LinkedIn profile is to get you that phone call. The whole purpose of your resume is to get you the interview. The whole purpose of the interview is to say, no, that was not 100% of my role. I can do this and this and this and this, you know, and to really clarify, to really win people over. So I became passionate about LinkedIn profiles, and because my husband and I were a bit misaligned in terms of what I wanted to do for a living. He thought social media was appalling. And yeah, now when he was like, oh, honey, I've got all these bills. And I'm like, hey, I got this. It's all right. That little social media thing you thought wouldn't take off, it's doing all right. So he wouldn't pay the big fancy 10 grand website that I wanted, which was a lot of money years ago. You know, when
still is.
Oh, it still is, but 13 years ago it was a lot of money, you know, and I didn't want
Mm-hmm.
anything second rate. You know, I knew that the digital reputation was everything. And also was struggling with my own brand. You know, I was writing resumes but not really liking writing resumes. I was loving writing LinkedIn profiles, and I was like, and then I got a lot of training work, and I was like, am I doing LinkedIn training? I couldn't really decide who I was for a while as well. So I loved LinkedIn because it was cheaper than a 10 grand website. And also I could wake up the next day and just change a whole load of it, you know? So it's my profile, my visibility, and my personal brand on LinkedIn has all grown as I've grown. It's almost never complete. It's an iteration. It's a work in progress. Sorry, it was such a long answer, wasn't it? Sorry.
And I'm sucking up every single word that you're saying. I hope everyone goes back to that, because even just the explanation, the difference between a resume and the LinkedIn profile and the purpose of each of those marketing assets, that's so powerful to know, because it all represents you. It's all a visibility strategy, and you need to know when to pull which string. But so many times people are just pulling out literally the last 30 years, and we as decision makers getting confused. Well, this or that, and confused minds don't buy. So focusing on what you actually want to be known for, and then elaborating on the rest at a later stage if necessary. That was an amazing tip.
And you're unpacking that is amazing, can I just say? You know, it's why I'm such a fangirl of yours. You know, what I'm hearing there is strategy. You know, you use the word strategy like yeah, everybody knows about strategy and what string to pull, but that's just so important. You know, you really need to think, where is my LinkedIn profile in that evolution? And it's you know, it's not the whole meat and potatoes, it's the entree, it's a taster. It's not to say it shouldn't have a lot of information in it, but it needs to have a lot of the information about where you're going and how you want to be known for, not what you've done and you don't ever want to do anymore. It really is a very strategic piece, you know. And what was that thing you said about confusion? You know, it's really important that it is clear, that you do keep it simple.
And I think this is where so many people are struggling themselves, because I always say, when you are in a jar, you can't read the label. And this always happens with us. We take our strength for granted because it's easy for us. So if it's easy for everyone, it's not. And nobody can read our vision or where we want to go. And again, I think it's quite unclear for many. I don't know what I want to do in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. I'm not even sure what I want to do next. And this is where they just get stuck and then complain that they don't get the promotions or the bigger roles. Like, well, go figure. You're not presenting yourself that way.
Yeah, and you've got to do the work, and that's where I've really enjoyed our conversations, is because I think as a LinkedIn profile writer, I'm really great at helping people to capture what they do and put it in a story framework that engages their audience. But if you have no idea what you want to do, that's like, getting in my car and saying, I want to go to Petra's house for lunch and I've got no idea where you live and I haven't told my GPS that. Like I don't even know. I can't even remember. You're in Brisbane, aren't you? Or are you in Melbourne?
Yes.
My car is not going to go in the right direction. So you really need to do the personal brand work first. You really need to know where you're going and what your I think you use the word pillars a lot. What are your pillars? What do you stand for? Who are you? You need to have done that work before you write your profile. Otherwise, you're doing what I've done, which is constantly changing your LinkedIn profile. And it would be really great if you could just shortcut all of that 13 and a half years of pain that I've had and just get it right the first time, know what it is you do and, yeah, do
So
the work.
true.
Yeah.
Now, another question is, who is LinkedIn the best platform for? Like, should everyone be on LinkedIn, or are there certain professions or industry more suited to the platform? What's your take on that?
What's your take on that? What do you reckon?
Well, I think everyone needs to be on there, to be honest.
You reckon everybody? Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? We've got what do we got? We've got 12 million member profiles here in Australia, according to LinkedIn. Now, I know many of your audience will be global. But if you think about Australia, only 12 million, that's like 90% of our workforce, right? That's a lot of people. Unless 11.9 million of them are my mum just trying to find out what on earth I actually do for a living. That's a possibility. But so it does seem that everybody from tradespeople and, everybody is on LinkedIn. It does increasingly seem to be a place for everything. I suppose I'm a little bit conservative, and I do feel that LinkedIn works best for people who are business to business. It is traditionally a professional platform. So it is a little bit like that, that sort of, cousin in the family reunion who's, done really well in investment banking or whatever and has got the right tie pin. It is it is a little bit daggy. It really is that sort of professional platform. So, but yeah, it's just my take. I think it is, for people, like say sort of hairdressers and stuff. My hairdresser's always like, why are you always tapping away? And I'm like, I do LinkedIn. And he's like, what's LinkedIn? I'm like, it's all right, honey. You don't need to know about LinkedIn. Like I don't really want my hairdresser to be on it. Does that sound wrong? Because I just think it is B2B. It is.
Yes.
It's for people who are strategic, who are outcomes driven. And I think that is largely the intent on LinkedIn. And although I know I will risk offending a lot of people by not being inclusive in my language here, I think that recognizing that it is people who are very business driven, very outcome focused, and largely very strategic in their mindset means that everybody's going into LinkedIn with a what's in it for me, how can we partner, how can we do business together, as opposed to let me tell you what I had for breakfast kind of audience.
Absolutely agree. Now, the reason why I think it's so important, because, as we said before, we are in a digital first world, and your results on Google are highly impacted by your LinkedIn profile. And that's usually one of the top 3 results. So even if we are not necessarily active as a hairdresser, but simply proving that you are a real person, you've got a real business, and you've got a LinkedIn profile also when it's dormant and you're not posting proactively or reaching out to people, I think it's just this social proof or this credibility status that helps us. And I'm not sure what you think about the new feature that's been introduced, the services provided, and you can request a proposal already. I think longer term, it will become like a Fiverr for professionals to connect supply and demand, basically. moving into the gig economy and freelance economy. So I'm not sure what you think about all those new features.
I was hugely excited about them, and hugely, I read everything I could. I published a couple of posts and an article about it, about the LinkedIn new marketplace. LinkedIn was calling it marketplace, where we're moving to Fiverr. My experience of the service provider section of LinkedIn is somewhat underwhelming. So to date, I've had 4 service proposals to date. And 2 of those have been asking me, what are your fees? When my fees are all over my LinkedIn profile. I'm like, clearly didn't read the profile. So I'm just, I think I've got, like, you can have 20 recommendations sitting underneath your services section, and I think I've got about 13 of them or something, but that doesn't seem to increase my relevancy ranking. Your ranking how you appear in a search, it doesn't appear to, you can't exchange money on the platform yet. You will be able to in the future. We know that LinkedIn's bringing that out. We don't have a date on that. So I think in the future it will be great, but I feel that I was a little bit optimistic to get all excited about it and post about it. So yeah, so all the listeners out there, I think it's going to be great, but I think there are other parts of your LinkedIn profile, features and tools that have been around for a long time, including one called Featured, which is still hugely underutilized. It's amazing to me the amount of clients I deal with who, even the contact info section, a section that's been on LinkedIn for 19 years now, is still largely incomplete by a lot of people. Often I'm writing a LinkedIn profile and I'm going, oh, is that your company website? And they're like, oh no, that was a few companies ago. I'm like, that's not okay. So I think there are other parts of LinkedIn that at the moment are more important. So I think services is going to be great, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it at the moment.
I agree. It's quite underwhelming. And if you're not a regular user, and you're probably like me, we're just pressing buttons and see what comes up and how it works. But if you're not a regular user, you don't even know how you can actually request a proposal. And it's not very obvious. It's not very user friendly. So I'm very underwhelmed. I think the idea is great and has a lot of potential, but it's very early stage. Very early stage,
absolutely. So I think the features section, so I have run my own business now for, we're coming up to 14 years, and most embarrassingly only finally got that 10 grand website early 2021. 10 grand website, paid for it myself, thank you very much. And very proud of that.
Love it.
It's only a small website. I didn't do any SEO on it, no Google AdWords, built it, loaded a couple of blogs on it and completely forgot about it. But what I have done is I put it in the featured section of my LinkedIn profile. I've made sure that it's got a landing image on my website that looks nice. It's, branded in my colors. And I just wrote a little description saying, my fees, services and booking details or something like that. And it is incredible that I get like an average of 63% of my views on my website come from social media, and that's from LinkedIn. So I think that there are parts of your LinkedIn profile, such as, go to the add profile section, and then I think it's called, you need to click on additional and then featured, and just put in your website address, or your employer's website address. Especially if your role is in some sort of business development or something, or a senior role. If you're the CEO of a company, show how great your company is. But make sure you control that meta description, complete it with, a little summary. Don't just have a big boring paragraph that LinkedIn auto fills from your website. You need to shape your brand. It's something that you can control. And I think that's so crucial. And headlines, a lot of people still have their headline, the bit that sits underneath their name, as just being their position title. Such a key part, right?
Well, this brings us actually in the next section. What is the difference between an outstanding executive profile that presents authority, credibility, and likability, and the average profiles. What's the difference?
Yeah, and average has increased a lot, hasn't it? As we've seen more and more people get on platform, we're seeing more and more people having better profiles as well. I think, a few years ago, you and I were talking about how important it is to have a background banner. And now you'd be hard pressed to find somebody on LinkedIn who doesn't have a background banner. Average is so much higher than it used to be. So, so people really do need to pick up their game. I think most people are writing their LinkedIn about sections in the first person. It's really rare for me to see people who are writing about themselves like they're not themselves. But I do still see that, where they're saying, Karen is a, senior leader with 25 years experience in yawn, and so I'm seeing more and more people using the word I. I think what does differentiate an expert and an executive from somebody who's just quite average is probably a focus on the reader. And I think this is where doing the work on who you are first before you write your profile really does pay great dividends, in that you need to work out, who am I? What do I want to do? Who do I need to appeal to? And that who do I need to appeal to, I reckon you really need to write that on a post-it note and stick it on your computer. And, just remind yourself, you're not writing your profile to impress yourself. You're not writing your content to impress yourself. You're not writing messages about how impressive you are. It's actually not about you. It's all about the audience. So I think the biggest differentiator between a good profile and an average profile is that the opening line does not start with, I am a senior leader with 20. It actually starts with, are you struggling to, X, Y, Z? I was speaking to somebody the other day, a lovely guy by the name of Craig, and Craig said, he's an engineer in a very highly technical field, and he said the people that I'm appealing to in my industry are very conservative, and if I sound too slick or too salesy, they're just not going to read. And I said, why don't you start your about section with something like, are you interested in electronics in the industry, because it's really niche. There's only like 200 experts globally. Me too. My journey on, in this technical field started when I was 8 years old and I was first given, this thing and so, but it needs to start with a hook that's about the other, that's about the audience, not about you. Don't you think? Like, it sounds counterintuitive. Like, people always think that their LinkedIn profile is all about themselves. But, that comes back to that strategy, doesn't it? It's half about you, but it's actually the other half of it is about the other. It's about who do you want to impress, and what's the language they use, and what are they looking for, and what are they interested in? I won this National Sales Award at Chandler McLeod. Well, I'm calling it a National Sales Award. They called it National Consultant of the Year Award, but it was for selling the most people. I was pimping people at the time, and let's call it as it is. And but you won't find that on my profile anywhere. I made my husband skip our honeymoon so that I could win that award. I was that prepared to prove to the lady who performance managed me that she was doing the wrong thing. I was that prepared to go out on a bang, because I knew we would get married, I would have children hopefully straight away, which I did, and I would leave recruitment and probably never come back to it. And I just really wanted to, sort of poke
leave with a bang.
Yeah, leave with a bang and poke my tongue out to the person who performance managed me. I really so did. Good. I wanted to blow that raspberry, if you like. And, and so massive achievement, forced my husband to skip our honeymoon in order to win that achievement. Nowhere on my profile, because it only matters to me. Doesn't matter to my audience. So you've got to always think, what do they care about?
Such a good point, because there's so many average profiles, and it's just, I've got in this industry for that long. I'm really I've got high attention to detail. I'm committed. All right then.
And my hobbies are socializing, reading, and drinking wine. Boring.
Yes.
Tell me something about towards the end of your profile, talk about your values, talk about what you enjoy. You must have the word enjoy somewhere in your about section. You've got to show passion for what you do. And I know that sounds cliched, using the word passion, so use the word enjoy instead. It's kind of the same but different, right? You need to show what you're interested in, but you need to show it in the language of your audience. And I love a call to action as well. I love at the bottom of an about section, be selective in who you want to appeal to. You don't want to appeal to everybody. You want to appeal to the right people. So have something like, if you share my interest in, let's connect. Doesn't mean you have to accept everybody's invitation to connect, but you have to appear friendly, And then when you get the invitations coming in, then you can, selectively decide who you're going to accept and who you're not. But you need to at least look friendly.
Absolutely. And I think also this is exactly what executive presence is all about, knowing exactly what you stand for, what you don't stand for, what value you can bring, who you want to be surrounded by, being selective with who you connect, with who you communicate, rather than just saying, yeah, whatever comes my way, I'll take it, I'll connect, because that's just floating. It's not leadership. And even if it's not people leadership, it's your self-leadership and your career leadership.
Yeah, and it can actually do so much damage when you do, when you try to be all things to all people. It just bites you in the foot in so many ways, or bites you in the foot. I don't know. I'm mixing up my metaphors here, aren't I? But listeners are going, what is she going on about? But you don't want to be all things to all people. You really need to pick your niche. It's not to say that you can't connect with people who are not exactly in your industry. Maybe they're not in your industry at all, but they're in the same city as you live in, or you do business in. So sort of thinking about, who do you want to know and who knows those people. So thinking about it as an ecosystem. I always have this picture in my head of lakes and ponds, so I always sort of think, pick your pond, pick your pond, and think about, I suppose it's because I grew up fishing with my dad, and we used to go fishing in ponds, and some ponds are connected to other ponds. So you'll have like some type of fish in one pond, and another pond down the road, they'll have the same sort of fish in them, because as my dad's explained it to me, and maybe I got it wrong here, but there's, this little sort of underground tunnel. So you want to sort of pick your pond, pick your ecosystems, and think, what are the fish that move between these ponds, if you like? Is that metaphor making any sense?
Absolutely.
Or are you going to edit it out?
No, I love it, because it's the power of connection. And this probably leads us also into the next part, because you are an incredible community builder and you have such an engaged audience. It's literally not comparable to anyone else's audience. What do you do to build this? Not following because you are famous, but following because you've got incredible thoughts, but also you show so much care about others and their thoughts. How do you go about building a community?
Oh, I think I've made a lot of mistakes actually in building community. I don't have a membership program, but I am very fortunate in that when I do create content, I do get a lot of likes and comments on my posts. One thing I've never ever talked about on a podcast guest episode before is about something I did really wrong, which I know is not your question.
Oh, we want to have the bonuses. Give it.
I used to belong to an engagement pod, couple of engagement pods. And so for those of us who don't know what engagement pods are, it's where and there's a lot of information, a lot of misinformation, all sorts of stuff about pods. And so I used to belong to a couple of pods. And so a pod is where, you'll comment on each other's posts. And I did that for a few years. It created some really great habits for me in that I could see everybody was creating content. So I would have FOMO, a fear of missing out, if I wasn't creating content. It sort of normalized this whole creating content thing. That was a good habit. I'm a little bit obsessed with James Clear and habits generally. I'm really obsessed with time and habits and efficiency. And I think that if you're not using LinkedIn, it's using you. So I loved that. Where it did me a massive disservice, and where I'm pleased to stand in front of you now and say, I haven't had anything to do with pods now for 2 years. Where it did me a disservice is that pods can create a narcissistic loop where you're only engaging with people in those pods. And so you think that you're getting a lot of likes and comments, you think you're getting a lot of views of your posts, but there's a big difference between getting a view of your post, which LinkedIn is really just measuring an impression. It was in somebody's newsfeed as they scrolled past, compared to it being read and commented on by real prospects and real connections. And so it just created this bubble, if you like, where, you know, only these other people who are in the pod knew me, and we were all liking each other's content. And so I think the real game changer for me happened when I left the pods, but I continued, instead of jumping onto the pods a few times a day and liking and commenting on their posts, having a habit of a few times a day, just for a few minutes each time, you know, when I'm going to go and pick the children up from school, in the afternoon, in the morning, while I'm waiting for my fried egg to cook. Did I mention I'm a creature of habit? And, you know, my kettle to boil. So while that's going on, scrolling through the news feed, but this time I'm liking and commenting on posts of people whose content resonates with me. I'm being very open-hearted in it. I've also made a real effort to connect with people who are potentially competitors or alliance partners. You know, those big fish, like you. I think you're a really big fish. That you swim in a lot of oceans and ponds that I fish in too, if you like. And, you know, so it's about reciprocity. It's about giving to others and creating comments that are really meaningful, and just having a habit of that. And also direct messaging people. You know, I'm a really big fan of personalizing invitations to connect, and as much as you can, responding to every one of those invitations to connect with a voice note. I don't send a written note saying, you know, thanks for accepting my invite to connect. I pick up my phone and I use the voice messaging feature, which LinkedIn's now made much harder to use. So that's interesting. But that's going to make me use that feature and promote that feature even more to really build authentic, heart-based relationships with people.
So many gold nuggets there, from you don't have to necessarily post yourself to still create a community by engaging in other people's content that resonates with you, also when they are peers and also when they're competitors, because in the end it's all about sharing conversations, creating value from each other, and everyone can learn from each other. And I think there's also where this growth mindset comes in. We've got plenty of opportunities for all of us out there, so why not share it? And also you mentioned the habit stacking that we quickly discussed before we start recording. It's small things like waiting for the fried egg to be done to have 3 minutes. It's rather than saying, oh, I don't have half an hour to do it, so I better not do it. No, you don't need half an hour to do any of that.
Yes, it's just a few minutes here and a few minutes there. And, you know, for me, you know, I've realized that since we've all sort of started working from home, I'm not actually moving very much. And I'm eating a lot of biscuits. I was putting on a few kilos. So no longer am I driving my car to my children's school to pick up my children. I run the few blocks there with my phone in my pocket, get there, and I'm all breathless, so there's no way I can leave voice messages for people. And I'm liking and commenting while I'm waiting for them to come out of school, you know. So I'm standing at the bottom of the hill, I'm liking and commenting on posts. You know, so just a few minutes every day is just so important. And I love that you mentioned growth mindset, because I think a lot of people are frightened of connecting with other people who are in the same industry as them, because they think, oh, but what if they're competitors, or what if my boss thinks I'm looking for a job, or, you know, what if you really are looking for a job and you're connecting with people, boss says, are you looking for a role? Well, no, I just have a growth mindset that we grow knowledge together. If we can all connect with everybody, it's not about carving up the pie, it's about growing the pie. It's about all supporting each other, and all growing that knowledge. And it does mean that, people might look at your work and go, LinkedIn profile writing, that's interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing, but I don't really like Karen. I don't connect with her. Oh, look, this person also does LinkedIn profile writing. I'll go and buy from them instead. Well, it's great that you led them to that person instead of to you, because that's going to be a better fit for them. So I suppose we're coming full circle to this idea of not being all things to all people. One expression I say all the time is you want to be more like Vegemite and less like vanilla, which will be completely lost to anybody listening to this in the US, won't it? But you don't want to be like, you don't want to be bland. You want to, yeah.
And before we wrap up the conversation, but one thing that still gets me so much is that so many senior executives are too afraid to put themselves out there. What if we get a negative comment, or what if? What is your take on that? Like, what is the role of a senior executive on LinkedIn?
To show their thoughts, I think I've created a really strong brand for myself because I've been comfortable disagreeing with people. And, this expression, I respectfully disagree, is one you will see me use so often on LinkedIn. I'm always commenting and saying, and I use the old-fashioned sandwich, I start with something positive, try and end with something positive. But in between, I say, I love, so I'll start, I love your post. I really agree with how you said this and this. So true. And then I might even Google and say, in fact, a stat here supports what you've just said. However, I respectfully disagree on this. What do you think? So I think we need to think of content not as an advertisement, but as a conversation. And I think we need to do the same in our direct messages, in terms of having, we don't want to send people messages saying, how are you? What project are you working on at the moment? That's so eye-rollingly bad. But you want to add more depth and say, I really enjoyed your article on XYZ in Small Business Insider magazine. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. If you've got time, let me know. Please do drop me any articles or any more thoughts that you've got on that topic. And then we say, oh, I don't have time to do that, but maybe we could have a chat. Oh, gosh, yes, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Do you have 15 minutes on Tuesday or Thursday? Boom, you've just taken an online connection offline. And that's what it's all about. It really is about having an opinion and not feeling like you need to please everyone. And that's how even people who disagree with you will come to like you so much more, because they'll know that, if you stand for everything, you don't stand for anything.
Mic drop moment. And it comes back to, again, full circle, what we said before. You need to do the unsexy work before. What is it that you stand for? What is it that you would fight for and defend because it's so important to you? And also, which topics are you not touching because it could damage your reputation? It's not aligned with what you actually want to be known for. And be very intentional about that. Like, I'm not sure about what you think about the two words authentic and intentional. Like, honestly, I cringe when I hear authentic. I know everyone says it, blah, blah.
Oh, but, sorry, I've used it a few times, haven't I? Sorry.
No. I understand what it means, but I think we need to be intentional, authentic. Like, if I'm, I've got, I had last week a 5 a.m. live on LinkedIn. And I just got back from the gym and I was still, sweaty and so forth. I could have been totally, authentic, no makeup, sweaty, cranky. But it wasn't the case, because I thought I had the opportunity to share my thoughts with somebody. They take the time to talk to me. So I'm going to be intentional about being the best that I possibly can for the situation. Authentically, I would have walked with a coffee and, enjoy my life. Yeah. So
I love how strategic you are. So you use the word intentional, and I think that's really great. And I'm going to be using that from now on, and I will give full attribution to you for that. I think that's really great. So I use the words in my workshops. I talk a lot about strategic intent. What's your strategic intent here? And I always think of it as a Venn diagram. All the engineers in the audience will understand what we're talking about there. So 2 overlapping circles. What are you interested in? What are they interested in? So anybody who knows you, Petra, knows that you love dogs in the gym. Do we want to hear about the dogs in the gym? No, not really. No. We like to know that you're interested in them, but like that's kind of it,
Mm-hmm.
Tell us your hobbies, but don't give us too much details. With all due respect, is that okay to say?
Absolutely.
So it's about that. So what do we care about? We care about your deep knowledge and how you've helped people create their personal brand, and how you do that, and what that methodology is, and what that transformation is, and the steps that others can take to do that for themselves. So it's that sweet spot of what you're interested in and others want to hear. That is what you need to talk about.
I love it. And this is what you are the best at, that you can actually put a bow on it and create incredible words and stories and language around what often is so hard for us to articulate. So Karen, where can everyone find you, connect with you, learn more about you, and obviously get their LinkedIn profile rewritten?
Absolutely. So, and I do have tons of free resources. I've got so many free resources on how to write your own profile and all of that sort of stuff, because I do believe, that everybody needs to be like that famous chef at a restaurant. Just give away all your recipes and people will start queuing at your restaurant. I really do believe that, and I'm lucky to be living proof of that. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Karen Tisdell, which is Tisdell, Tisdell. Or you can check out my website, karentisdell.com. But I love how you said it's about putting the bow on it. You need to do the work first. So you need to listen to all Petra's podcast episodes, and you need to get the book. Because if you don't know who you are, you're going to struggle to write your own profile. And certainly myself and nobody else is going to be able to do it for you. You need to know who you are, where you're going, who your audience is, at least have a bit of an idea on that stuff. You got to read the book first. Read Petra's book. It's a great book.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you so much, because you've got so much passion, you've got so much personality, and I could talk to you for 3 days nonstop. So thank you so much for being here and sharing all your wisdom and your secrets.
Thank you. Pleasure's all mine. Really appreciate it.